We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football, and if you do as well. If you need just a little bit of extra college football content to get you through the days, to get you through the nights, we are 3 Saturdays away from college football. Holy smokes. Welcome in. Welcome into the studio, to the house that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Welcome in. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. In the comments and in the phone calls later in the show, please subscribe to this channel. If you're new to the channel, you'll get notified of our next coming live show or episode, and then smash that like button. We need you all to smash that like button. It helps with the algorithm of YouTube so very much. Go to our merchandise store, a link that's provided in the description box. Go take a look. There's mugs, t-shirts, other merchandise will be available as the football season kicks off. Next week at Peek Around the Corner, we're going to be talking about the top impactful players for each and every team. Not quite. The Autonomy 5, those schools, those teams, and then we'll reach into G5, the most impactful player for each team. And then we're going to be looking at the big games, week 0, week 1. And of course, eventually, I will do my predictions against the spread in this year. I guarantee you, no more Greg the Cooler. It's going to be Greg the Heater, baby. Greg the Heater. First of all, we got to do this because there's been a whole lot of this. Cloak and Dagger, drink responsible, Saturday morning. You got to excuse the voice this morning. I don't have my total voice, don't have my singing voice, that's for sure. And I'm sure a lot of you are very happy about that. There will not be any singing in this live show. Eventually, maybe I'll do the Oregon, Washington fight songs and the Arizona schools, but not today. It's not happening today. The voice is going. We have a lot to get through. The title of the show is PATC, Peeking at the Seminoles, the Florida State Seminoles. This monologue is going to be Seminoles-centric. We're going to start out talking about what happened in the Big 12, what happened in the Big 10. You all know what happened, but we're going to give you our thoughts on it. What's going to happen with California, Stanford, Washington State, and Oregon State. They're all very interesting storylines. A lot of people want to know what's going to happen to their university. A lot of fans of those schools, they want to know what's going on. We're going to give you our best shot at a peek around the corner. Our web, thank you so much for your super chat. Greg, is there an encore on the Big 12 stage? It's not over yet. It's not over yet. As you know, there's reports that Brett Yormark got the okay from Big 12 presidents to look at a possible 17th and 18th school. You heard reports that Brett Yormark, that the Big 12 might be looking at basketball-only editions. Now, at the start of Act 13, we told you, during that week when Colorado made the decision to finally jump to the Big 12, we told you there was a wardrobe change. There was a different vibe. There was a basketball hoop set in back of the curtain behind the stage. That Brett Yormark was now talking to his media partners about a possible editions, basketball-only editions. They've been working on this. Yes, Brett Yormark went for four. Got all four corner schools. All four corner schools. He hit the home run. He hit the grand slam. Brett Yormark hit the grand slam. His first grand slam was on October 30th, 2022, when he struck that deal. And a lot of people were sleeping on that. A lot of people did not recognize how important that was. That was an epic moment. We did not sleep on it. Episode 83, check it out if you're new to the channel. That was not our take. Our take was Brett Yormark just crushed it. And now the Pac-12 is going to be in trouble. Thank you. So, our web, we're going to get to it in a second. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Ryan Thomas. Greg, next show, please sing American Pie by Don McLean. Here's to 2023 and the Prophet. Go for being Greg the Furnace. Thank you so much for your generosity, Ryan Thomas. I don't know if I can sing American Pie. I'll give it a chance. I'll see what I can do with it. Right now, my voice is so gone. There's no singing allowed in the Flugar household. The little general will not allow it. I'll get back to you on the American Pie, Ryan Thomas, but thank you so much for your super chat and all your contributions to the Peek Around the Corner channel. Appreciate it. We'll go to the Big 12 first. Let me say thank you to everybody here. Skull Ducky, good morning. Kirk Bender, thanks for coming on in. KS Bear FN, don't be afraid. I'm texting my psychiatrist right now. Kaufman, I will try to keep up the great work. Thank you so much. Tater Tots, what a week. Yes, sir. What a week. Conundrum, do not be afraid. Stephen McNeely, good morning. Richard L., thank you, sir. Hardest working man on YouTube. Thanks for coming on in. I appreciate it. Ryan Brooks is in the house. Lewis, Carlos, Diaz. Here we go. Morning, Greg. Good morning to you, Lewis. I appreciate you coming on in. Kyle Visser. Does Act 13 have a curtain call? Are we done with Act 13? Yeah, we're on Act 14, by the way. The Arizona, all that was Act 14. Now we're on to Act 15. We are on to Act 15. When it comes to the Big 12, they have a couple things left to do. 17th and 18th school, possible basketball additions. I don't think anything of that's going to happen this week. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. We got Big 12 scheduling to figure out. Once they get the total composition of the conference, that's going to cause a lot of drama. So no, we're not done with the Pac-12 saga, Big 12 saga play yet. But yeah, we're on Act 15. Act 14 is what happened yesterday. Act 13 was Colorado. Act 14 was everything yesterday on August 4th, the collapse of the Pac-12. We're on Act 15. And we're still on Act 1 of Florida State, the ACC drama. We'll get into that. That's going to be a big part of our monologue. Great week, Jim Bagley. Nothing like a live PATC. Thank you. Big 12 wants Virginia Tech. If I had to speculate, and hopefully it would be an educated speculation, I don't think the Big 12 is getting Virginia Tech. I don't see Virginia. I see Virginia Tech going somewhere else. We'll get to that. Again, for now, it's not a report. For now, it's speculation. CFB Plus morning. Curtis Brown. Thanks for coming on in. Ack Mac, what a glorious day. Bo Stacker, thanks for coming on in. I appreciate it. Gary, keep your head on a swivel. Buckle up. Rodney Durant, thanks for coming on in. Jim Reese, good morning, Greg. PATC community, holy smokes. Give us the drums, Greg. I did the best I could. The King is alive. Thank you. Papa Cad, word. Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody coming on in. The Real Flugging Deal. Mike Smith, let's go Godfather. Richard L., Oregon State, UConn to the Big 12. We'll get to that in a second. Thank you, AMAC. Appreciate it. Nick Flynn is in the house. Brandon is in the house. John Famlor is in the house. David Griffin. Can't sing today. I really can't sing at any time, but not this morning. The voice is not so good right now. Zach, thanks for coming on in. Sandman, Ryan Matson. Everybody was glued yesterday. Beastie Ditz, pack it up, Pac-12. D5 Terps is in the house. Okay, a lot of people coming on in. Alan Tran, Day Old Donuts. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. Greg, I just wanted to pop in and say thank you for your unbiased opinions and honesty in your show. It's a lot of fun. Keep our popcorn machines are running. Thank you, Day Old Donuts. Appreciate it. Okay, here we go. And for everybody else, I didn't get your names. Thanks for coming on early on a Saturday morning, the day after the aftermath. What happened? Big 12. Let's talk about the Big 12 first. We're going to talk about what the Big 10 what happened at the Big 10, and then we're going to get to the Florida State. We got a lot to go through this morning. Brett Yormark went 4 for 4. He got them all. Big 12 is at 16 schools. All the schools are getting the $31.7 million. We've been telling you for months that even though Fox wasn't obligated, that they were going to belly up at the bar and they were going to make those 4 schools whole, keep everybody, nobody in the current Big 12 was going to be diluted of their revenue. We told you that over and over. I answered that question 1,000 times. That wasn't going to be the issue. Fox had their own incentive to do what they just did. And what was that? Oregon and Washington. And we talked about that for months and months. Fox Sports wanted Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten. Fox Sports got everything they wanted. Everything they wanted. Fox Sports is sitting there smiling, and they might get a little bit more of what they want. Brett Yormark got everything he wanted. He had great communication with his current media partners. That's just how it went. What's next for the Big 12? Cameron B., thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. Fox should have sent Oregon and Washington to the Big 12. That's not what Fox has wanted to do. Fox owns 61% of the Big Ten network. Fox makes a boatload of cash on Big Ten content. Boatload of cash. The ratings have skyrocketed. Fox Noon, the pecking order, what Fox wanted was Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. They come in as a discount. It's all gravy for Fox Sports. All gravy for Fox Sports. They came out the big winner yesterday. The cloak and dagger that was going on behind the scenes with Fox Sports, they won yesterday. But thank you for your super chat. I appreciate Cameron B. Thank you so very much. So what happened? So we know what happened. Now, we got reports. You all knew about the Yormark poking and prodding with Fox Sports and trying to determine if there can be basketball-only add-ons. We reported to you at the start of Act 13. Suddenly, after a couple months out of the building, Gonzaga ran into the front foyer. They were in line for the popcorn stand. Brett Yormark came, took Gonzaga, took him to the back of the curtain. And now suddenly you saw reports yesterday that, again, Gonzaga and the Big 12 are talking about basketball-only edition, and UConn. When it comes to UConn, we at Peek Around the Corner, we're going to give you our best shot at this. We believe at Peek Around the Corner, UConn will not be offered, nor would they accept a basketball-only invite. And they're still in the hunt for a full member as a part of the Big 12. UConn is still in the hunt. Thank you, John Till, for your super chat. They still need Stanford to pair with Notre Dame and USC. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that. We have really good intel on what the Big Ten is thinking right now. So we're going to get to that. We're going to give you guys a real good peek around the corner. So we're going to give you a dot, an information. Remember how we like to connect dots? I kind of give out information and then see something else, somebody else. We like to connect dots. We're going to give you a dot here today to keep in the back of your mind. Okay? We do that. We do that a lot here at Peek Around the Corner. I don't know about that, Cameron B. Thank you for your super chat. It seems like Fox has cornered ESPN. ESPN is fine. But Fox had a big day. Fox got what they wanted. And Fox wants a little bit more. And we're going to get into it. So UConn is still in the hunt. They are. Here, look. We talked about this previously. If Brett Yormark has so much political capital. He's got so much political capital inside the Big 12 with his media partners. He wants UConn. That's what he wants. And he got the okay from the Big 12 presidents to see if they can work it out between themselves, UConn, and the media partners. We're not declaring that UConn's going to be a 17th or 18th member. We do not have them at the center of the stage. Not yet. But it is real. What they're trying to do is figure out, is there something that works for UConn, Big 12, and the media partners? Brett Yormark earned that. He earned that ability to see if he can make something happen. And the Big 12 presidents, while not hot on UConn being a full member, even coming in as a discount, people have to be intrigued what Brett Yormark could do by getting the New York media, the Eastern media markets to talk about Big 12 basketball, not just during the games, but throughout the season, because you have UConn in your conference. Women's basketball, men's basketball. So UConn is still in the hunt. And Gonzaga, as a basketball only, is still in the hunt. We don't believe UConn basketball only is a possibility here on August 5th. They've talked about it. Yormark has done the homework on it. But we don't believe it's ever going to get to that point. And of course, Yormark and the Big 12, we'll wait to see what happens in the ACC. And let's get to that right now. Before we talk about the Big 10, because it all ties in. Article, the Tallahassee Democrat, Hassan Kasim, Florida State Conference Realignment, rumors swirl, what we know about Florida State leaving the ACC. Conference realignment continues to be a hot topic around the college football landscape, with Florida State embroiled in the middle of it all. People within Florida State have been outspoken about a potential exit from the Atlantic Coast Conference as conference realignment talks heat up across the college football landscape. The news for Florida State is nothing new. Michael Alford has voiced his frustrations with the future revenue gaps that are going to be evident for the Seminoles up against teams who reside in the SEC and the Big Ten. Here's the latest about the conference realignment. Again, this is the Tallahassee Democrat. The reason Florida State has not left the ACC, as it becomes clear that it isn't going to be a change in revenue structure coming, is a large exit fee. Equates to 3 times the revenue earned a year prior to departure, and a grant of rights that lock in the media rights that runs through 2036. Now, we're going to go through this article. I'm going to give you some intel. Here, so buckle up. At a Board of Trustees meeting on Wednesday, Florida State President Richard McAuliffe called the school's situation an existential crisis. On Friday, Sportico reported a unique exit for Florida State. Florida State University is working with J.P. Morgan Chase to explore how the school's athletic department could raise capital from institutional funds, such as a private equity, according to multiple people familiar with the plans. PE giant 6th Street is in advanced talks to lead a possible investment, said the people who were granted anonymity because the specifics are private. Institutional money has been poured into professional sports in recent years, from the NBA and global soccer to F1 and golf, but this would break new ground by entering the multi-billion-dollar world of college athletic departments. Breaking new ground, ladies and gentlemen. The school is considering a structure similar to many of those pro sports investments, where the commercial rights are rolled into a new company. The private equity fund invests that entity and then recoups its money via future media sponsorship revenue. That's how Silver Lake structured its investment into the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team, and how CVC organized its $2.2 billion Spanish soccer deal with La Liga. The Sportico article stated it reached out to representatives for the FSU Athletic Department, JP Morgan Chase, and 6th Street, but all declined to comment. Florida State is rocking the boat and is not afraid of making things uncomfortable for others as it seeks an exit from the ACC. Following Wednesday's Board of Trustees meeting, Florida State was met with opposition from some inside the conference. One critic was North Carolina Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham. I don't think it's good for our league for them to be out there barking like that, said Thursday during a radio interview on the Gaddam Gold show on 99.9 The Fan. I'd rather see them be a good member of the league, support the league, and if they have to make a decision, then so be it. Pay for the exit fee. Wait for your grant of rights that you're given, and then in 2036, when those rights return to you, do whatever you want. Well, Bubba, they're not waiting to 2036. You know that. I know that. PATC community knows that. It's an interesting development, as North Carolina was part of the Magnificent Seven, which joined FSU in attempting to vet options and breaking the conference's grant of rights agreement at the 3-day ACC spring meetings in May in Amelia Island. In May, ESPN. Now listen to this. Listen to this, PATC. I think this is not the dot that I was talking about, but this is a dot, a PATC dot that you might want to put in the back of your mind as we try to connect the dots. In May, ESPN's Paul Feinbaum stated that Florida State is not nearly as attractive as they think they are regarding a move to the SEC. That was in May. On Thursday, while talking on First Take, Feinbaum reversed course on what he said in May. This is Feinbaum. If you look at Clemson and Florida State, there are no two better fits in the world to the SEC than those two, Feinbaum said. I mean, they've won national championships in the last 10 years. They recruit at the highest level. They have good coaches. They have phenomenal traditions, and they're both in states with SEC schools. So in May, they're not nearly as attractive. They're not nearly as attractive as they think they are, regarding the move to the SEC, and then suddenly, bam, out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, oh boy, they're really attractive. They're really attractive. Why did Feinbaum flip on a dime? Well, Feinbaum is as plugged in as anyone in college football with the ongoings of the SEC. He also added he believed Florida State's time in the ACC is coming to an end. Suddenly, Feinbaum sounds like Kirk Herbstreit. But clearly the ACC is struggling right now, Feinbaum says. They're struggling for a lot of reasons. Primarily because they have a TV deal that doesn't end in 2036. Meanwhile, you see the Pac-12 schools scrambling like roaches at night. The Big Ten has shown indications it could add a few more. We're going to get into that. We got a little bit of nugget. We got a dot that you want to keep in the back of the mind so we can start connecting the dots. You can take my information today that I'm about to give you, and you can do whatever you want with it. But on Saturday, August 5th, we're going to give you a little bit of information. So buckle up. The Big Ten has shown indications it could add a few more. So the Florida State president and the board yesterday, in an unprecedented meeting, essentially saying, hey, somebody come save us. And the most likely prospect is the SEC. And don't forget, there are other schools in the ACC that are not happy. Florida State is not the only bad kid in the kindergarten class. And finally, when it comes to this article, the Big Ten now must decide. Here is the PATC money shot of this article, and it has to do with the little bit of nugget, intel, that we have received in the last 48 hours. The Big Ten now must decide whether to stay at 18 schools or expand further. The league's options are adding Stanford and Cal, or waiting to see if any schools become available from the ACC, such as Florida State, Clemson, Miami, or North Carolina. Okay, I'm going to read this over again. I know you're rolling your eyes. You're saying, Greg, get on with it. The Big Ten now must decide whether to stay at 18 schools or expand further. The league's options are adding Stanford, Cal, or waiting to see if any schools become available from the ACC, such as Florida State, Clemson, Miami, or North Carolina. Now, more information about Florida State, the uniqueness of Florida State. Just going to go quickly. There's two parts of the original Sportico article when talking about J.P. Morgan Chase. Okay, I'm just going to read these two real quick. A handful of Florida State trustees and spokespeople did respond to multiple requests for comment. Representatives for the athletic department, J.P. Morgan Chase, and 6th Street declined to comment. Okay? So we don't know everything here at Peek Around the Corner. But we're going to, again, we're poking and we are prodding, and I think this is important. It's unclear exactly which Florida State entity is most involved in the process. Florida law allows its public universities to organize their athletic departments as separate nonprofits. And there's a complex web of entities that includes the school itself, its booster organization, and these nonprofit athletic setups. Many public schools also have strict rules around transparent competitive bidding for university contracts, and certain deal structures would need to be avoided so as not to jeopardize a university's tax-exempt status. So there's some uniqueness to Florida State. There's another part of this I failed to attach on to, but I think you get the drift. Now, this is David Hale, ESPN, great writer. Okay? Great writer. This is his thoughts. He put this out on August 3rd. Florida State has had numerous legal teams reviewing the Gore for 2 years now. They're heavily invested in finding it out. They and others think there may be some options, but none of those are close to a sure thing. If they were, it would have happened by now. Again, you guys know how much I dread that logic. Because something hasn't happened yet means it's not going to happen in the future. I cannot stand that. I avoid that. And I read it all the time. Okay, back to the David Hale Twitter. I don't want to address every message board rumor, but I'll talk about it. Number one, Florida State does not have a fraud claim to get out of the Gore. We at Peek Around the Corner, we believe David Hale is correct. That is our take on it as well. As we continue to poke and prod on this, we don't think there's some mysterious fraud claim that Florida State is thinking that they can pull out of the hat, and that's how they're going to get out of this. I've talked to numerous people involved in the initial grant of rights and network launch with zero incentive to lie. The ACC network has paid out beyond projections. That is also true. The ACC network has paid out beyond projections. That's why March 31st, 2023 in a live show, we believed one of the ways that Florida State could challenge this if Notre Dame left first, that would collapse the ACC network's value, and then Florida State could argue about not getting enough consideration when they extended the grant of rights. But they can't do that. They can't do that now. They don't know if they can do that in the future because Notre Dame still hasn't done anything, right? So David Hell is correct on that as well. Seriously, though, eyeballs mean a lot. This is David Hell. The ACC has fought hard with ESPN to maintain prime TV slots on ABC, ESPN, and as the conferences grow, getting those key slots is going to be tougher and tougher. Again, look at the Pac-12's situation. David Hell's correct. But let's say Clemson and Florida State have a double secret invite in their back pocket. How do you get out of the gore? Short answer, you can't. Again, look at Texas and Oklahoma. They had 3 years left on the grant of rights and still had to wait 2 and pay $50 million each to leave 1 year early. The ACC is heavily incentivized to fight this tooth and nail. If Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and North Carolina left, the league could add from G5 and get a decent enough TV deal to stay afloat. But the existing teams would want as many parting gifts as possible. $2 billion in walkaway money goes a long way. You see that? We'll get back to that. Another rumor. There is zero incentive for 8+ teams to leave to dissolve the league. For one, no one has confirmed that's even possible. Second, teams would get much more by staying and taking payouts from those leaving. It ain't happening. We agree with David Hell on that as well. As you can see, we are agreeing with David Hell throughout this whole thing. Except for the point where, if it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen in the future. We actually, anyways, I don't have to go down that road again. So where will this end, David Hell says? Where will this end? The best answer I can give is the same one I've offered for 2 years. Eventually, Florida State, Clemson, and others are likely to leave. They'll probably write some very big checks. It probably won't be tomorrow, but won't be 2036 either. There are other potential outcomes. Maybe ACC finds new money, or ESPN decides it needs ACC even at a higher cost, or maybe the whole landscape of college football blows up and football breaks away. Maybe we're all in a simulation and reality is a false construct. All possible, none likely. The key part is, David Hell says, the best answer I can give is the same one I've offered for 2 years. Eventually, Florida State and Clemson and others are likely to leave. They'll probably write some very big checks. It probably won't be tomorrow, but it won't be 2036 either. Okay, what does that all mean? What do we have to add here at Peek Around the Corner to this story? Okay. We believe what's about to happen. First of all, there are serious people. I cannot say this enough. There are serious people who believe that Florida State is basically gone. They're going to do it. The only question is, do they get themselves out of the ACC before? Do they do a withdrawal notice before August 15th of this year or August 15th of 2024? But they're gone. They're gone. They've made the decision. They're going for it. They're done. They're out of the ACC. Florida State will not be in the ACC for the 2025 football season. And they might not be in the ACC for the 2024 football season. Now I know, I'm a big believer in the grant of rights. You guys know this. But I'm talking to you from, and I got to be careful here, but people who do this, there are people who basically are telling me, who also believe in the grant of rights, but Florida State is gone. Like, they're gone. They've made the decision. And they're trying to, and they have some smaller decisions to make. Well, not smaller. I shouldn't say that. They have some big decisions to make and how exactly they pull this out with the process. But they're gone. Cameron B, the ACC Network, Big 12, now merger might equal Florida State's gone. Thank you, Cameron B, for the super chat. If that happens, to save the ACC, give the Big 12 more money, it doesn't matter. Florida State is gone. We have Peek Around the Corner, being told what we've been told. We believe Florida State is gone. Either for the 2024 football season or 2025. So when when Mr. Hale, ESPN reporter, says either that they're going to write a big check and it's not going to be tomorrow, it's not going to be 2036. That big check that they're going to write is a lot closer to tomorrow than it is in 2036. We think they are writing a massive check. Here's another little bit of intel. We believe that Florida State, without using JP Morgan Chase, without going into all that, we believe that Florida State has, or is close to having, the exit fee money already at their disposal. So the exit fee money, anywhere between like 120 million or short of 120 million, or they might get settled down to a little less than 120 million. Hold on, let me. They already have that money, or will have that money. When Maryland left the ACC and wrote a check, and I know there's a ton of questions. I'm going to get to them as best I can here. When Maryland was leaving the ACC to join the Big Ten, the ACC said, Maryland, you owe $52.2 million. Maryland, ACC negotiated, and Maryland ended up paying the ACC $31.3 million. So is Florida State going to pay the whole $20 million? I don't know. $120 million or less. What about the grant of rights? Florida State's going to write a massive check. When do they deliver that check to the ACC? I don't know. It probably won't happen before August 15th of this year, but it's going to happen at some point. They're just going to write that massive check and say, we're buying our way out of the gore. We'd rather pay somebody else or we rather bet on ourselves. You're going to hear that a lot. Florida State is betting on themselves. They think their brand's going to suffer for 13 years. That's just what they believe. They believe they're going to die of 1,000 cuts. They're not going to be as valuable 13 years from now as they are today. That means that's why they're acting today. This is the best, the highest value they're going to have. If they're going to go in a deal with a private equity firm, today is the day they strike the deal. Because 13 years, 10 years, 7 years of being $30, $40 million behind the SEC schools that are around them, the Big Ten schools around them, Florida State's value only goes down. Money is needed for coaches. Money is needed for staff. Money is going to be needed for student athletes. This is the time for Florida State to strike, because this is the time they're going to be most valuable, because even Florida State, a big brand, value will go down in this environment by being $30, $40 million behind every year. Plus, you guys got to know, you know this, even though Florida State and Clemson are big brands, ESPN, they always shine the brightest lights on the SEC schools. They have to. They're paying them the most money. So Florida State's going to write a check. Is ACC, now the question is the ACC going to accept this massive check? Or if they don't, then Florida State's going to go, how can you not accept this? We're buying our way out. Then that's going to go to the courts. And that's where Florida State believes, that they're going to be in good stead with that. How can you sue them for damages? All these schools are getting all of Florida State's money. Boston College, Wake Forest. Luke Fletcher, thank you for your super chat. Thank you, Luke. Appreciate you. Appreciate your generosity to the channel. Now, is this risky? Is this crazy? Is this radical? Yeah, yes. You ask any college football reporter, you can see it when they talk about it. They're saying they can't do it. They're locked in. Florida State's locked in. I'm telling you, peek around the corner, the best information that we have on our fingertips, and we think it's really, really good. Florida State is gone. Is it stupid for Florida State to do this? I'll let you judge that. But there are a couple things that are Florida State, they truly believe that their value goes down as the years go on, and they bring up a very good point. Okay. Now, the connection, the information that we have in regards to the Big Ten, which ties into everything. And I'm sorry for the long monologue. We'll get to your comments and phone calls as soon as possible. When people have reported that the Big Ten is, let me see if I can find it again. I may not be able to find it. There we go. The Big Ten now must decide whether to stay at 18 schools or expand further. The league's options are adding Stanford in California or waiting to see if any schools become available from the ACC, such as Florida State, Clemson, Miami, or North Carolina. That option of adding Stanford in California, if that happens, if the Big Ten adds California, Stanford, it ain't happening anytime soon. The chances, now you guys know how PATC fell, but I've always thought about the California candidacy to enter into the Big Ten. But this is coming from, the Big Ten is not adding California, Stanford anytime soon. The work that the Big Ten did with Washington and Oregon, they have not done any of that with California and Stanford, including Stanford. This isn't going to happen this week, next week. This isn't one of those things where the Big Ten's going, any moment now, should we add California, Stanford? No. In fact, in this situation, I think it's going to be like Stanford, maybe they can wait and maybe they can do some independent stuff. I don't know what California's going to do. I don't know if they would join the Mountain West. But California and Stanford are not Big Ten candidates in which the door is cracked open, which they've exchanged information. None of that has happened. So when they say options of California, Stanford, that's barely an option. That's not even really registering right now. Yes, if everything closes down in the ACC and the Big Ten finds but it isn't really an option right now. I mean, the Big Ten has done as much work in Florida State and other ACC schools as they've done in California and Stanford. Basically, nothing at this point. Serious work. I've gotten some DMs of really good people, really nice people. California Bears out there. They've got people saying that California's been in talk with the Big Ten. And look, if we're wrong, we'll take the L at Peek Around the Corner. We'll start our next show. But we have strong reasons to believe that the California Stanford to the Big Ten, if it happens, it's not happening anytime soon. Not this week, not this month, not next month, probably. John, Stanford Independent, Cal, San Diego State to the Big 12, maybe. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. So what does that all mean? We're trying to provide the best peek around the corner, just like we've done with USC calling the Big Ten, which we broke. We're trying to provide the best peek around the corner like we did with Colorado at the center of the stage for a month, the hot bubble of action, the meeting. The Oregon and Washington 5 months from now, 5 years from now. We're trying to give you the best peek around the corner when it comes to ACC country. We believe the Florida State thing is as real can be. As crazy as it is. As a person who has preached the grant of rights, Florida State is gone. They're going to write the check. I cannot tell you if it's August 14th they send it over or the June of next year to get out by July. Whatever it is. We don't have that confirmed. But that smoke that we said is real, there is a fire. We can confirm that. Thank you, Opie, for the incredible generosity once again. Opie, thank you so much for your contributions to this channel. Guys, huge difference on the Oklahoma, Utah, and FSU ACC deal. Big 12 had 4 years left at the announcement. If your lawyers tell us it's 2 4-year case, it's not worth the fight. Settle with 2 years left. Florida State ACC, 13 left on the gore. You fight. It's not worth the wait. Opie's correct. Opie's correct. And, I've been talking about fighting in the courts, trying to, you got to do it now, you got to do it early. No, Florida State's going to write a massive check. And David Hale, the great ESPN writer, says it's not going to be tomorrow, but it's not going to be to 2036. That massive check is going to be written a lot closer, a lot sooner to tomorrow, today, tomorrow, whatever, this week, than it is in 2036. Way closer. Way closer. This is what Florida State's going to do. And how ACC responds to a massive check, I know people say they can turn it down. Well, then Florida State, if you turn down Florida State's massive check, now Florida State, they believe will have some juice. Now they believe they have some juice in the courts. Okay, Florida State. Where would they go? Where would they go? We've reported here at Peek Around the Corner on the last live show. Thank you, Opie, once again for your incredible generosity. Thank you. Where would Florida State go? We said in the last live show that the Big Ten is not about to go into the deep weeds with Florida State as a candidate until the Florida State Seminoles untangle themselves legally from the ACC grant of rights. So until there's a settlement, until Florida State gives ACC that big old contract, that big old check, and the ACC finally accepts it, then the Big Ten will consider and probably would love to talk to Florida State. And I know a lot of Big Ten fans, Big Ten people who want Florida State to be in the Big Ten saying, Greg, you got to be wrong. Maybe we are. We'll take the L. But that is the information that we believe to be true. Strong reasons to believe that's true. How the SEC thinks about that, I don't know. We don't have intel on that. You see what Paul Feinbaum, he has switched, hasn't he? We talked about it. Paul Feinbaum says in May, Florida State, they think they're, all that. They're not worth as much as they believe. They're not as attractive as they believe. Now suddenly, Paul Feinbaum, Florida State, and Clemson are the two best possible additions to the SEC. Why do you think he flipped? There's a whole bunch of serious people think that this is going to happen. That Florida State's going to send a massive check to the ACC. That Florida State's already got their exit fee figured out before the JP Morgan Chase situation. And that Florida State would rather bet on themselves and go enter into one of the two conferences that are going to be around for the next, very valuable conferences. Florida State is willing to bet on themselves, willing to share a slight of whatever money they make for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. But they want to do that deal now because they believe the value of their athletic department, the value of their brand only starts going down starting today. That's why. That's why when David Hell says they're not going to write a big check tomorrow, they're not going to write a big check to 2036. You better move up that timeline. It's closer to tomorrow. It's very close to tomorrow. Very, very close to tomorrow. What day exactly? Before August 15th or after they do the withdrawal notice, we do not know. We're going to keep poking and prodding. But this is happening. We believe it's happening. In Florida State, by hell or high water, they are gone. If they're going to join the SEC, it's a possibility. Are they going to join the Big Ten? It's a possibility. We're not there yet. But SEC, Paul Feynman, he sure has changed his mind. Now, this is why yesterday, now everybody relax. I want everybody to relax. I want the Oregon Duck fans to relax. I want the Washington Husky fans to relax. I want Penn State to relax. I want the Buckeyes to relax. I just put this up there for entertainment purposes only, but it had a little bit of an angle to it. Okay? I put up a future pod, Big Ten, 20 schools. Again, speculation. I'm not reporting this. Hey, Mac, I haven't relaxed in weeks. I'm not reporting this. No way am I reporting this. In fact, I shouldn't have even put FSU and Notre Dame at the bottom of that fourth pot. I should have just left it blank and said ACC. Okay? But I think, from what we have heard, if the Big Ten goes to 20 schools here for the next, the Big Ten is willing to go to 20 for sure. And if it goes back to pods, which I think eventually it will, and if what I heard to be true about the Big Ten, pretty far away from adding a California and Stanford. Like, there's a very good chance that's not happening. Okay? That means if you go to 4 pods of 5 schools and you cut down the travel and you're making sure that no school goes west to the West Coast more than one time, this works. Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa in a pod. USC, UCLA, Nebraska, Northwestern, Illinois in a pod. Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State in a pod. Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, ACC school in a pod. For example, the time that you would have Wisconsin Badgers play a Big Ten conference game outside of the division on the West to USC, UCLA, that's the year that they have Oregon and Washington at home. You can do this, still figure out a way for no school to go go to the West more than once. You look at Oregon, you're going to have 4 of your 9 conference games. This is before the division, the semifinal game. You're going to have 4 every year. 4 of your 9 conference games, no farther no farther east than Wisconsin. So now you just have 5 more conference games. 2 or 3 of them are going to be at home, 2 or 3 on the road. You see how that cuts down on travel? The big part of this, the big negative about this is once you will not be able to play every school once every 2 years. And this will have a 10th conference game that is your semifinal weekend, where the 2s will play the 2s, the 3 will play the 3s, and of course the top team in each pod will play each other in the semifinal. I'm throwing that out there for just to start the discussions in and around a 20-team conference. We're going to be discussing this for years. The Big 12 is going to have the same situation. They're at 16. They're knocking on the door at 18. And I want to make a comment here. And then we're going to get your phone calls, comments and phone calls. People believe that Florida State is on their own when they're doing this. But once they do it, if they successfully have the ACC have to accept their massive check, other schools will follow. And the big four schools that the SEC and the Big Ten would want is Florida State, Clemson, Miami of Florida, and North Carolina. And that's why those four schools keep getting brought up. Yes, Virginia Tech, if one of them goes somewhere, the other one's probably going to have to go somewhere. And you got some other ACC schools, Notre Dame. But those, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, I already forgot. Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami. So if 2 goes one where, let's say SEC gets Florida and Florida State and Clemson, then the Big Ten is going to be targeting North Carolina, Miami, Florida, and we'll see how that all works out. But Florida State we believe, is gone. And a lot of serious people believe they're gone. Either way, by hell or high water, the Florida State Seminoles are gone. The smoke, as we reported about 10 days ago, is real. Now we are reporting on August 5th that the fire is real. Let's get to your comments and your phone calls. You could talk about anything that happened yesterday. You could talk about the Florida State Seminoles situation, but we had to go through it. This morning, we had to go through PATC, peeking around at the Seminoles. Richard L., that massive FSU check would be distributed to the remaining members, resulting in keeping some teams loyal to the conference. SEC and ESPN has entered the game. Feinbaum does what Shanky tells him to do. Well, $300 million over 10 years, $30 million a year check. Check could be much bigger than that as well. It could be. Holy smokes, holy cow, Big 12 Conference, 16 teams. John, thanks for your super chat. I like your list. Just add Miami, North Carolina, Stanford, and Cal. As we said, the Stanford, California, if that happens, it ain't happening anytime soon. It's not like it's just not happening anytime soon. I don't want to go any further than that. Let's get to your phone calls again. I'll get to your super chats and I'll get to the other comments if we have time. Phone line is open, 763-260-1333. What do you think, man? Big 12, got all four schools. SEC, are they going to act on the ACC if Florida State writes that massive check? I think they will. Big 10, Oregon, Washington, future schedules. How are they going to work out?
Call from
Attorney Dave.
Attorney Dave, I'm glad you called, sir. I'm glad you called. I know you're going to yell at me. I know you're going to say, Greg, you're being irresponsible. You're probably right. But Attorney Dave, Florida State is going all out to get out of the conference. Take it as you will. The floor is yours, good sir.
I think that you're right. That's the actions that are being taken. When we talked last time, I just said that there was not a likely way out of that grant of right. And I think I said that they would have to pay. Mm-hmm. It has to be something where they paid a lot of money. And I'll tell you what, don't think about it. I tell everybody to think about it like this. Don't think about it like there's a difference between damage models. There's a compensatory damage. I'm not going to get too much legalese for you.
Okay.
There's restitution. A lot of people think about things like restitution, like Florida State's making $30, $40 million a year. Therefore, that's what they would have to pay back. But the damage model that ESPN and the ACC would be initially the ACC, they'd be thinking about it like, how much does Florida State worth to us right now and into the future? And that's the damage model that they would be using.
Yeah.
So you're correct. You're correct in saying, like ESPN would have to put a real, or let's say the ACC would have to put a real damage model on the table. Say, we have these experts. This is what this looks like. This is how much you would owe us to get out of it, for us to be made whole. And that's the legal term for these types of things. Is how much money is it going to take for the ACC and ESPN to be made whole? And so just because I signed a contract with you that you don't like anymore, and I got the better deal of the better side of the bargain on that, doesn't mean at that point that you can just pay me back what our contract is. You got to pay me back for what you're worth at that point, and that's why we signed contracts.
Yeah,
is because we're each taking a gamble on each side, saying, I think you're going to be worth this. Florida State, heck, for all we know, we ended up in a recession. The money all dried up. Florida State couldn't get access to something. So they chose security. And so
yes.
That's why we're in the situation.
Yes.
So for Florida State to get out, you're right. They can find a way to pay enough money to get out. But it's going to be a lot of money. And I would say, you can tell me if your sources, say this, but I mean, it's going to be at least $500 million.
Yeah.
And I think the other reason for that is they have to figure out a way, if they're going to let Florida State out for an obscene amount of money, that it is a deterrent. And I think we talked about this last time, that it is a deterrent to as many ACC teams as possible to want to get out of that contract. And because they got to figure out a way to keep the conference together. So if Florida State's paying $500 million, or Florida State's paying, $750 million.
Yeah.
Which I probably would say somewhere in between the two is what that I would say. If there's an initial offer on the table from the ACC, it'd probably be closer to that second number, and then probably work its way towards the first number there. So I mean, you're 100% right with that.
Yeah.
But I think we talked about all these things. I say what Hale was talking about is exactly what you and I talked about.
Yeah.
The other day.
Yeah. You're I agree. It's not going to be, and I've seen a few chats already. It's not going to be, Florida State just has to write a check by the amount of how many years left times how much revenue money they get every year. They're going to have to go above that, because as you said, right? So, however, to counter that, I think Florida State's going to argue, that $120 million that we owe you on the exit fee or whatever that is, that has to come down some, because we did that with Maryland. We agreed that Maryland, $52.2 million that they were supposed to pay the ACC, that went down to 31.3. So Florida State they might save a little bit on that, but they're going to have to pay over the top of what you just talked about on how much they would owe in the grant of rights. So either way, $500 million, $600 million, $700 million, we have been told that they are going to write that check.
Right. And I'll say the only difference there might be, and this is my understanding, is the ACC redid their bylaws. They redid that exit fee because of the way that things happened with Maryland, right? Because Maryland, that's why they put this grant of rights into place.
Yep.
And so it may be different, and the language may be different for Florida State and Maryland. And from what I'm hearing, I don't think Florida State's even debating that they're going to probably have to pay that $120 million the way that the language is at this point. I think it's because it's by the revenues of the ACC per year or something like that, and within their bylaws that they're agreed to. So one way or another, I would say that it really depends. I wouldn't take what happened with Maryland as any sort of precedent.
Okay.
Because of the fact that they changed all their bylaws, they put these grant of rights in to stop something like this from happening with Maryland again, even though that's where we're likely ending up here right now.
Yep. You're probably right, Attorney Dave. I would never go up against you in a debate, so I'm just gonna say you're probably right. Most likely, definitely correct. It's going to cost a lot of money. You and I are not going to haggle over a couple million here or there, or 10 million or 100 million. The interesting part is, and the question I have for you, let's say, we're just pretending here, okay? Let's say Florida State, the Board of Regents, the Board of Trustees, when they had that meeting, somebody, I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been the president of Florida State, or it might have been somebody on the board. Either way, they said, I think it was the president, they said, we need an exit plan in the next 12 months.
Right.
So people took that as, they're not going to be, I took it as well, they're not going to be sending a notice of withdrawal to the commissioner and to the other ACC presidents, because they just said we need a 12-month exit plan. I think now that 12-month exit plan is exactly when do they send the check? How much do they settle? Do they that? I think that's their exit plan when they're trying to figure it out. So my question to you, Attorney Dave, if Florida State withdraws from the conference on August 15th. I'm assuming, I'm asking you, that Florida State, when they withdraw, they don't quite have that action of saying, here's what we're willing to pay to the ACC. When do you think that happens after they send the withdrawal notice? Like, when do they say, hey, ACC, by the way, this is what we think we owe you, $700 million, $600 million?
I would say they're probably already having some preliminary discussions. It's probably what makes sense.
Okay.
It's probably what makes sense about why the commissioner of the ACC started talking about expansion for the first time that we talk about in a while. I mean, he knows what's going on. They're not hiding it. There's a saying in the law, right, that if the facts are on your side, you pound the facts.
Yeah.
If the law is on your side, you pound the law. And if neither are on your side, you pound the table. What we see right now is that Florida State doesn't have the facts on their side if they're trying to get out of this thing. I know it's something we talked about previously. They don't have the law on their side. And so between not having the facts and the law, we just saw them just go on and pound the table for 48 hours about how they wanted to get out of this thing and how it's so unfair and this and that. But it don't matter if it's unfair because they signed the contract and they made the dumb decisions to get them into where they are today. So as a result, they're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so, as you know, and I think that's where we're headed right now. But I would say they probably already started floating stuff out there about what they're going to do and trying to use leverage. Now, whether they would try to leave before August 15th, I mean, that's kind of a determination. They know the facts on the ground better than you or I do. Yeah. Because they're actually having these communications. So if they feel like leverage would rise for them to go right now, I think that there's a potential for it. As I told you last time, I'm very doubtful that that's the route they're going to go because it could also leverage against them pretty quickly. This could take a while. This isn't something that when you're negotiating over hundreds of millions of dollars, this could take a year. This could take 18 months. There's a lot of uncertainty there, right? And so if you're trying to reduce risk, the last thing Florida State wants to be in a situation with, and I told you this last time, that the Big Ten was not going to in any way formally talk to Florida State until they were out of that. Because they and Fox, and I say more than Fox and the Big Ten, they don't want to be on the hook for potential liability, which could be hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Yeah. So they don't want to get dragged into this thing. So my opinion is there's always some level of back channeling, but it's a back channel like FSU hires a consultant that's very familiar with the Big Ten thought patterns. And that's how they know that they're a valuable brand, and that's how they know officially that they would have a landing spot and things like that because they're relying upon this consultant who knows how the Big Ten's thinking, somebody who's been in the Big Ten office recently or something like that. Yeah. But they don't want to get involved, the Big Ten specifically, and you reported that over the last couple of days. There's no way they would be accepting anything with them until then because they don't want the liability, and that's real liability. That's something that really could happen. So, I think that at this point, Florida State, FSU, the board of trustees, all these folks. I mean, this is certainly unprecedented to what we just saw in college athletics between them trying to figure out a way to finance this thing, and the situation of them just brazenly and openly yelling about it because that's not what we saw with USC and with UCLA, as you reported through all that process as they were moving as quietly as possible. It's not what we saw with Oklahoma and Texas. It's not even what we saw with Colorado, which they would not openly talk about any of this with the exception of we're going to do it in the best interest of Colorado and moving forward. So this is unprecedented, and the reason it's unprecedented is because I think FSU knows that they have very few options other than to put some pressure on the ACC, put some pressure on ESPN, and attempt to use that as negotiating leverage of an unhappy conference, unhappy members, create division to a point potentially where the ACC would be like, all right, just give us a ton of money, enough money that we can live. And as somebody I think pointed out in the chat, they're making really the ACC whole to make ESPN whole, but you got to make both whole and leaving. So there's going to be money that would need to be distributed to the members, the other members of the ACC, and to ESPN to make everybody whole. And so, but I do think it seems, from what I'm hearing at least, that the Big Ten would probably be the choice of FSU for whatever reason that is.
Could be
the way that they're thinking through things.
Could be.
But it would be a lot easier to somehow make your way to the SEC, as we talked about last time.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is that they're openly burning bridges with ABC, ESPN when they go through this process too. It could be pretty nasty. There's a lot of questions at that. That's why I think what you want to look for is that Clemson's sitting behind watching. North Carolina, even though we just heard they're watching, they're not happy with the way that Florida State's handling this because that's not the way that they would handle it. But Florida State's made a decision that they're at that point. And I'll say this too: Florida State, they're making a determination that their value is going to be decreasing. Who knows? If they went and won the national championship or went to the playoffs the next 4 years, and lower ACC,
but they're making a judgment that that's going to get a lot more difficult because of the money gap.
So, as we get to a 12-team playoff, well, you're right, probably win a national championship. But if they make the playoffs the next 4 years, they have supposed to in the last decade, then maybe their value would go up in a lower ACC. So, but they're making a determination generally that with this money difference, that's where they're going to go. But I'll say what you want to watch for is potentially Florida State making a move, and with a lot of the issues with whether it's the AAU status or things like that, maybe Florida State gets the nod, but then somebody like the SEC then swoops in and says, "We ain't letting Clemson go." And there's a lot of Clemson alumni who would say, "We don't know about the Big Ten and ESPN," and trying to figure out a way to just basically do what we've talked about in the past, which is a lot easier to get from the ACC right now to the SEC. So you can see something like that happening because we're and I can tell you, and I've this is a while ago, years ago. But,
we got to wrap it up, Dave. I got a bunch of calls here.
I got you. North Carolina is definitely the school that the SEC values the most.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir. Call again, Attorney Dave. Lost the call. Rutsky Grizz, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. Hoops fan, understand it's way down the priority list. CBS Turner, $1.1 billion deal for NCAA men's tourney expires 2032.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan, can you hold on 1 second here?
Sure, as always.
Appreciate it. Could consolidation take control of March Madness away from NCAA then? Yes, the answer is yes, it could happen. And that's why Brett Yormark is determined to build up the basketball product of the Big 12 as high as he possibly can, as much as his media partners are allowing him to do so. Because if the consolidation happens with March Madness, it can't happen unless you go through Brett Yormark and the Big 12. This is why Brett Yormark is doing all this maneuvering behind the scenes. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Rusty, for your super chat. I appreciate it. There is one more super chat I got to get to. Our web. Historically, exit fees are settled at 60 to 65% of value. You are correct, Mr. Webb. Thank you once again for your generosity. Okay, Ryan, the floor is yours. Thanks for your patience. What do you got to say?
Yeah, if something does happen to the ACC tour implodes, I'm sure that Brett Yormark would love to pick up Duke, Louisville, Syracuse, and Pitt for basketball. This is just basically, what we have here is a good old-fashioned 1950s, 60s, and 70s Cold War, Greg, and the building up of the sports nuclear stockpiles here. Great call from Attorney Dave, the prior call. Said it better than anything I could say. Great call. What I don't understand is if we're talking about $500 million here or more, and Florida State's going to pay that, it just seems so silly to me. Why don't you want to spend that on your program to stay relevant? It's sort of like, it's strange to me, and I think Dave hit on something that's exactly right. It's pounding the table, and I think Florida State's threatening to burn the house down if they don't get their way. And, we'll see how that plays out with ESPN and the media partners. I do want to point out one thing, though, that I think, and it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's going to happen, is at some point the politicians are going to get involved. And, like I said, Virginia Tech, Virginia, UNC, NC State all have a lot of alumni and a lot of political power in those two states. And they also have, congressmen and women and senators and things like that they have connections with. And, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think for those that are hoping for and thinking that there's going to be a quick resolution to the ACC this month, I don't think that's true at all. I think this is going to be a very long, bloody slog. I think that, there's just too much involvement here. There's a lot of money at stake, and also, there's going to be political involvement. And as Moen and I were talking about yesterday, if ESPN tries to get involved and reallocate things, and you've got, market allocation schemes for antitrust purposes, and things get crazy. And this is just going to be. I wonder what's going to really happen here, because the whole system is being threatened to be blown up and destroyed, and I'm not sure what end that Florida State's doing this, or if they understand what they're doing. I think they do understand what they're doing, but it's just going to be. This is going to be far more complicated than the past drama was. But that's all I had. Great call for everybody. And as we get into this, the second play on the second play on the PATC, I don't think we have Act 15, Greg. I think this is a whole new play, and I think this play could go 47 acts. But a great show, and keep up the good work. And thank you everybody for your calls and contributions.
Thank you. Appreciate the call. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I see people bringing up Oregon State. And, I think there's a report. I showed it up on Twitter last night. There's a report that Oregon State still trying to, talk with Yormark. They could come in as a discount, possibly. Maybe take some of those late window games, agree that they'll take most of them or whatever, more than they share. Could happen.
Call from
Western Civic for the Gopher Godfather, please.
Western Civic, the floor is yours. What do you got to say, sir?
Oh, I got a lot to say, Greg. Hey, thanks for coming live so we can do this. I would like to ask unanimous consent to extend and revise my remarks. Is the Little General available? Because, Greg, I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate your national audience for, listening to all of us in the mountain region for all this drama that's been going on out here. It really means a lot to us. And I hope to just I got three general categories. I'm very well prepared this morning, Greg. And then I just kind of want to take the L. I'm going to make a confession. I want to talk about some things that other people haven't talked about anywhere regarding Utah and what's just happened here. So with the permission of the Little General, I might go a little longer than usual, but I'll promise it's good. And then I'm going to go off into the sunset, and you probably won't hear from me for a while, and you can focus elsewhere in the country. Is that okay with the Little General?
Your Little General, yes, it's okay with the Little General.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Greg, feel free to converse with me as I go along. I don't want to.
Go ahead.
You see something, you want to throw something out? Go ahead.
No, I want you to get started. We got a lot of phone calls stacked up. So
Okay,
get
let's
started.
get on it.
Rock and roll.
Let's
go.
All right. So
until he's talking.
Got it. All right.
Golden cheese, green salsa,
Got it.
and bacon.
Thank you.
I missed that, Greg. Hit me with it. What was that?
Well, the little general just gave me a quesadilla here. She just sent it into the studio.
Well, enjoy it.
Yeah.
So let's get to it. Look, obviously, none of the 4 mountain schools wanted to go to the Big 12, and I think that's really a problem. I mean, when's the last time you saw people move to a conference against their will? It's a real tragedy that, not a single West Coast venue. I hope that if Utah's listening, that they'll find a way to pull back out. I think that we need to, you're much better off at being like Cal or Stanford right now and just, being on your own and keeping your options open. If you think Utah, the decision makers at Utah, if you think this isn't a fatal decision, just look at what Florida State's trying to do right now to save their butt. And they're not even an AAU school. So anyway, look, I'm taking the L on I was a catcher, Greg. Opie, I hope you're listening. And I'm going to take the L. I'm going to at least defer to Opie on this because it's like this, Greg. I was a catcher, right? And I set up for the low outside pitch hoping he'd swing for it, right? And what happened was my pitcher threw a high hard one over the inside part of the plate, but I looked like such a freak reaching over to grab the strike. I didn't get the call. You see what I'm saying, Greg?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so, girl, I'm going to defer that to Opie.
Okay,
it's
give me a napkin, man.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My, Opie, you can get a hold of me. It's my handle. If anyone can ever see my comments, and that's another thing, shadow banning and whatever else. It's my handle in the comments on YouTube minus the numbers and add a Gmail on it. You can get a hold of me there, Opie, and we'll make payment arrangements for you. And then I also want to we'll see how the full memo plays out by 2026, but, we're all sitting here trying to read the mind of our oligarchs, and I think it's a silly game to be playing largely, although it's very intriguing and certainly care about my football. Anyway, this is the Rebel Outpost for college football. Isn't that right, Greg?
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. And look, one sense I got from Utah a couple days ago, and it may have just been PR, but the one thing I got that was twice removed from the president, and this was a few days ago, and it may just be PR that they give to everybody, I don't know, but they were really talking about a real sense of lack of control. Like they were not able to control their own destiny. And it was very distressing. And, and I say what you want about ASU, but them trying to fight this too. I mean, can you imagine being ASU and not playing on the West Coast? I mean, it's just this is nuts. And so, anyway, so I also wanted, so the second, and also I was feeling really good. I just did debrief on all this, how it went down for me. I was feeling really good about everything going into that Big 12 media days. The first thing that got me worried was someone asked a question to Shadur Sanders of the Colorado Buffalo. He said, what do you think about the Pac-12? You excited to come over here? And he just went dumb. He didn't say anything. That's the first, that made me a little nervous. But look, all these people knew this. And Opie, as far as like, you tell me what you think. I want to ask you, Greg, now what do you think about that Instagram post?
Not much.
All right. Well, you and I both knew that Oregon and Washington were going to the big. I looked back at my records. I knew it on March 2nd. Okay, we got a tip. It was a tip from the Ohio State Insider, their Oracle, whatever. I went and tried to find, and my people I know at Oregon, and got a subtle confirmation. And so we knew it way back then. And so, who did orchestrate this? I mean, this wasn't like, this is a script. They relegated all the people they weren't taking, and now Cal and Stanford get to sit back and maybe go to the Big Ten and whatever.
It's a script. It's
so
a script.
I defer to Opie, and I'll take the L, Opie. Like I say, send me an email. I'll arrange the payment and like that. But this stinks. And all of our partners in mountain football, Wyoming, punching way above their weight for so long. Utah State, when I was an undergraduate at Oregon, when we used to, eat lunch with football players because they were in the dorm with us or in our fraternity with us, it was a whole different thing back then. I forgot what I was going to say again, but anyway, what I remember, I remember looking over at Corvallis and going at Oregon, and knowing that Utah State belonged in the pack before Oregon State back in the 1980s. Boise State's been an innovator forever. Utah, BYU, and Colorado all have a national championship each. We're just the least populated part of the country, and it's been nice to finally get a little recognition over the last few years. But then to just be relegated for it, I just watched 30 years of Utah progress get eliminated in a 5-minute meeting last night. And let me just say, nobody releases news at 5 p.m. on a Friday unless they don't want anybody to know about it. That's just standard PR procedure. This was done in the dark of night. They didn't want the Utah fans to know about it. And I would imagine, UConn, that might get in there. But if you ask the rank and file UConn student, where would you want to play? There may be other people, but okay, let's go on to what happened.
Okay, we got to wrap up this call. We got a lot of phone calls
here. Here's the sort of the money shot that no one's ever talked about. And in the last 2 years, Utah, 2 years ago, beat Oregon twice, knocked them out of the national championship playoffs, which cost the conference $111 million. And then they did it again last year to USC, knocking USC out of the national playoff, which also cost the Pac $111 million. No one talks about that. No one talks about
that. You're talking about it now at the People on the Corner YouTube channel? Okay.
What's that?
You're talking about it now, so I'm glad you get the opportunity. We got to get the other phone calls, sir.
All right. Well, let me just throw this. I wonder, what I wanted to do, Greg, really? There's a lament that I wrote after the Rose Bowl. I was hoping to end by reading it. It would take a couple minutes.
Yeah, we don't have that. We got about 10 seconds left. Let's go wrap it up. I can't.
Yeah, well, this sucks, Greg. This just sucks. And, everybody pushing this narrative. We never had a chance. It's just do it, top down, and everybody. And why were you mad at ASU for fighting their relegation yesterday, Greg? I'm not logging in to watch football. I wonder if I'm going to watch it at all. I certainly don't watch the NFL, and there are reasons I don't watch the NFL. And if those reasons come to college football, I won't be that fan either.
Yes.
No war, Greg.
No more war.
The only realignment ever needed was playoff flexibility.
Thank you so much. Woo! Holy smokes.
Call from
Lewis, I'm so glad you are the one that's calling. Thank you so much. The floor is yours. What do you got to say?
A couple of perspective points. First of all, I've been following realignment ever since Penn State jumped to the Big Ten in 1990. And it's the first time in realignment where West Virginia was actually on the right side of a realignment. Usually West Virginia is getting demoted. So even though it's a lot of road trips, that's a good thing. But one thing I'll point out, I did a little bit of quick math. The travel, if the Big 12 does the old Pac-12 travel schedule and does 2 games per road trip, actually could be not that much worse, or might even be a little bit better. So it may not be so bad with travel. I will need some coffee, though, because I envision some late-night games now. The teams that West Virginia and Cincinnati and UCF will have to play out west. So there are some adjustments.
Yeah.
Good to be on the right side of this. Cal and Stanford, I was very puzzled about. Apparently, why would not Cal and Stanford at least approach the Big 12, even if they have no interest? If their only options were to go independent, and they're not going to the Mountain West because the Mountain West academically and the AAC academically is not any worse off than the Big 12. I was very puzzled about it. Now, there have been a little bit of rumblings that Stanford might be thinking differently, but I believe, and it's just an opinion based upon following this for 30 years, that there might be some plan in place that will come to fruition within the next 2 or 3 months on Cal and Stanford. But that'll be interesting to watch. That's really what's left is what happens with the carcass of the Pac-12.
All I can say is I reported it earlier in the show. For those who believe or who want Stanford and California to be added to the Big Ten anytime soon, I think you're going to be disappointed. They are not anywhere close. That's the intel we got. I had to report it. You guys can do whatever you want with it, but it's not like they haven't even started. Big Ten with Stanford and Cal is not. They're going to wait what happens with the ACC. So the Stanford's not going to be added anytime soon.
I agree with that. Things can change. But if it's not that, it could be the ACC. Ross Dellinger put out a tweet last night that was rich that the ACC decided to have an expansion meeting last night after the party was already over.
Yeah.
Talk about being reactionary. You needed to have that meeting about maybe 3 months ago. The Big 12 has been talking to the Four Corners schools, at least informally for a year. Informally, and then more formally more recently. So the ACC could be a fit as well for Cal and Stanford academically, but the travel's brutal, and you have to get votes from schools that went out of the grant of rights in the ACC, so that's a real mess. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, but overall, a very good day. But yesterday was my last point of the 31 years of realignment, ever since the independents started going to conferences. It was the biggest day in realignment, 5 schools leaving in one day, and it ended up resulting in the end of a conference. But I wonder, even if you could go back in the time machine to July 30th of 2021, and the Pac-12 presidents knowing now what they didn't know then, which is the Pac-12 was going to die, when the Pac-12 had a chance to kill the Big 12 and added 4 Big 12 schools, they chose not to. They might have made the exact same decision anyway, damn the torpedoes, because there's just that cultural difference that is in part why the Pac-12 is in the situation they are in now. Yeah. They did not embrace the need to expand. Brett Yormark knows what he's doing. He's the most consequential commissioner hire in the last 30 years. And have a great day, Greg.
Thank you so much, Lewis. Thanks for the great phone call. Eisman 57, Mr. Hot Guy, thank you for your incredible generosity. Except for when you forced me to sing the Iowa Hot Guys fight song. That was not a good moment for me, nor this channel. I'll get back in a second.
Call from
Monavision, you've got to wait a second here.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I got to chew out a Hot Guy, even though he was very generous to me right now. Eisman 57, you forced me to sing the Iowa fight song. You almost destroyed this YouTube channel. But I thank you for your generosity and your friendship. Thanks, Greg, for all your hard work and dedication this past year. I really enjoyed your entertaining and insightful commentary. In closing, I'm sorry my Hot Guys keep winning the Floyd. No! If the Gophers were going to win him back, it would have happened by now, right? Eisman 57, you're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me, even though you're keeping the lights on in the studio with your very generous donation, your generosity. Thank you, Eisman 57. Hot Guys. NBC, Saturday night, Minnesota versus Iowa at Kinnick. I don't know what the date of that game is. I don't remember. We're going to have a watch party, and this time we're bringing home the Floyd of Rosedale. It's coming home. Well, it's not really home. It really does belong to Iowa. But it's coming back to Minnesota. You heard it here first. Thank you, Eisman 57. Monavision, what's going on? What are you thinking?
I think you're right. Florida State leaves. I think you're wrong. I think the Big Ten will get involved and take them before they lose. So.
Before they get themselves detangled from the grant of rights?
I believe they will.
Okay.
I know you don't agree with that, but I think it's a situation where they're going to say we can go Big Ten or SEC, and I don't think the Big Ten's going to take a chance on losing them. I think there's probably, and Attorney Dave could probably lecture me on this, but I think there's probably a creative way once they cut that $500 million check.
Well, Attorney Dave did say there'd probably be some communication, just not, direct communication.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they get them in for the 24 season, but I think they would get them in for the 25 season.
Okay.
And I think that sets up perfectly because in 2024 is the last year of the NBC deal with Notre Dame. So Notre Dame would be free in 25 as well. And those would be your last two additions to the Big Ten, Florida State and Notre Dame.
So you like my pod then? You like my pod? I'm going to put that Flugar pod up there on the screen.
The schools in the conference, Greg. I don't like the USC cakewalk pod. That is not right.
USC, wait a second here. They got to play UCLA. They got to play Nebraska. Nebraska's coming back, correct?
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. Illinois is probably the toughest one on that schedule right now.
Come on. Oh, I don't know.
So I agree with the teams. I don't agree with that schedule. We have to work some of that out. I mean,
we'll work it out.
We can work it out. But I agree with those teams. I think once Florida State makes it official they're leaving the ACC, I think that takes enough value away from the ACC and it adds an element of, it removes some of the stability the ACC has, and Notre Dame maybe finally realizes the time has come and the party is over. They join the Big Ten as the 20th and final member of the conference. I think the Big Ten would be happy with those 20 teams. I know their network partners would be very happy with those teams.
Yeah.
I don't think they would need to go to 24 at that point. I think they would probably let SEC have UNC and NC State and UVA and Virginia Tech and Miami and Georgia Tech and all those schools if they could land Florida State and Notre Dame. So I do agree with your lineup. I disagree with your pods. Next topic. In regards to the Big 12, was there ever a cap placed on how many P5s they could add to receive the pro rata for ESPN?
Yeah, I think it's 4.
Was it 4? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so Oregon State would have to come in as a discount. UConn would have to.
Right. But I think, wouldn't it make more sense to pick up an Oregon State and a Washington State? Because that's going to help you get as many games as possible for that Big 12 after dark slot to sell ESPN.
In that sense, yes, but not in the what I would call the interpersonal relationships between the commissioner and their presidents and all the political capital that Brett Yormark has gathered up. I know, Monovision, you are anti-UConn to the Big 12, but man, Brett Yormark wants them. And I can see UConn, Oregon State. I can't see an Oregon State, Washington State, and leave UConn out of it. Plus, those Eastern schools, they're going to want. They're probably, they'll probably come around and say, let's bring on UConn because we got a lot of Western expansion over here. Let's not add 2 more.
Well, if you're doing that, you have to add UConn as a full member in football, basketball, all sports.
Yes, you do. I think so. And they'll come in at a steep discount. So,
but I mean, you think you still have to pick up one more team out west to get that Big 12 to maximize the amount of content.
Yeah,
for the Big 12 after dark.
And Oregon State is a candidate. I think that's why I think. I'm sorry to interrupt your phone. I think the Mountain West thing is going to take a little bit more time to figure out what Mountain West can do, will do. I think the Big 12 domino has to fall one more time for the Mountain West schools to eat, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree there, and I don't disagree with you on Cal or Stanford. Stanford's never making it into the Big Ten, guys. They're never going to share those research dollars. They're never going to let anybody else access the undergrad programs they have with these technology companies. Yeah, I understand football money, but research money is way more important to them than football money. So, and I know Cal desperately wants into the Big Ten, even less than the Ducks would, but it's not in the cards for them. So they're probably going to end up in the Mountain West with Washington State, and I don't even think they can control that name PAC anymore. I think once Oregon State leaves, it leaves only 3 members, and it falls below the level they would need to continue the PAC.
Yeah, I think the PAC. I don't think the PAC's going to exist, even in name. I don't.
Yeah. So, but that's what I think, Greg. I think next week Florida State drops that letter. I think they cut a $450 to $500 million check.
Yeah.
I think it would be foolish of the ACC teams to just dismiss it offhand, especially somebody like Wake Forest, when you imagine what their cut of that check is going to be. That's certainly going to make things a lot easier on them in the future should they get left out. So I don't know that, and like I said, if it takes a year to disentangle from that, I think the Big Ten could wait that year, but I think they want to get some kind of we'll call it a letter of intent, for lack of a better word.
An assurance.
An assurance that Florida State is coming to the Big Ten and not the SEC. So I'll jump off here, Greg. I know you got a lot of calls coming in today. Just wanted to put that out there. And just like I say, if I'm wrong, here on Peek Around the Corner, we eat our L's. We don't delete our L's. So,
thank you, sir.
Catch you later, Greg.
Appreciate it. Motivision, Mr. Buckeye.
Call from
Jason.
Jacob, can you hold 1 second, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. John Teal, if this SEC picked out Florida State, the Big Ten can pivot to Miami. Yeah, I believe so. I mean, if Florida State actually succeeds, writes a check, ACC has to settle or decides to settle, then we have a situation where other ACC schools are going to follow, and then Miami would become prime candidate. They are a prime candidate for the Big Ten. You are absolutely correct. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. And I know we have another super chat here. Sasha, thanks for coming on in to Peek Around the Corner. I disagree with the Big Two. Once ACC crumbles, Fox and ESPN run the sport, just invested $500 million a year in the Big 12. They will keep them relevant. I absolutely 100% agree with you, Sasha S. No question about it. Big 12, they're in the room. They got themselves in the room. They're going to be part of the decision-making process for college football and college sports for the years and years and years down the future. Thank you so much for your super chat, for your generosity to the show. I appreciate it very much. Jacob, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Sure. Quick question regarding the Florida State issue.
Yes.
I kind of agree with you with the grant of rights. One really creative idea I heard some number of months ago was Florida State playing their home games at a, quote, neutral site in order to not have to pay out the home game grant of rights per the contract. Have you also heard anything similar creative like that?
Yeah, I've heard it. I don't know. I mean, Florida State makes a lot of money in their home games. I just don't see that as a solution, to be honest with you.
Yeah, losing.
But I've heard it.
Ticket sales. Okay. Second of all, your comments on Brett Yormark with everything he's accomplished. If he just went to the conference and said, accomplished all this, give me UConn, do you think they'd let him do it?
Well, they've already decided, according to multiple reports, the Big 12 presidents have already decided we're open to. You can go ahead. You can see if you can get a 17th and 18th member to the Big 12, and you have until December of this year. I think that is I would consider that maybe a love letter of the Big 12 presidents, sending it to Yormark. Now Yormark's not going to just do it if it hurts the Big 12 in any way. I mean, from his perspective. But yeah, I think they're giving him the leeway to see if he can make it work to the benefit of all the Big 12, the institutions in the future. Also considering that Yormark wants to decouple basketball content, football content, and all the things that we've talked about. Brett Yormark's got the political capital. I think he's going to use it. I think the Big 12 presidents are going to acquiesce. UConn is still in the hunt for a full membership of the Big 12. To become a full member, even they're going to have to come in at a steep discount, but I still think they're in the hunt.
Gotcha. Last one, a little Pac-12 post-mortem. I want your impartial take on it. So yesterday, the Pac-12 media stated Oregon was the domino to fall that caused the collapse, and then Big 12 media was saying, "Oh, Arizona was already on its way out. They were the one that caused it." You probably keeping track of the situation more than me. What do you think was the true cause? Was it the Big 10 moving or the Big 12 moving on the Pac that caused the final nail in the coffin?
Okay. We had heard the previous night, August 3rd. Well, we had heard early on August 3rd that August 4th was the day that everything was going to collapse, that it was all done. That's why we put an episode out, or a live show. I think it was an episode saying the death blow to the Pac-12 is going to happen August 4th, Friday. Arizona, man, they were out the door. They were out the door the previous night. So Arizona was gone no matter what. That's what we were told. Going into that Pac-12 meeting, and we heard a little bit different than what's being reported out there. We had heard the Pac-12 meeting for that Friday morning was basically canceled. It never got off the ground. In other words, the reporting that the momentum had heard, that there was some momentum turn, that looks like the Pac-9 might get it together and sign the grant of rights. We think that was bad sourcing going to certain reporters. Now after the fact, now that we've digged into it, we don't think that there was a meeting going on and then Oregon interrupted it and say, wait a second, we're leaving, so we're gone. We believe that the meeting never got off the ground. So what was the final dagger to all of this? I think it was Arizona, to answer your question. And it's not Arizona's fault. I'm just saying, once it was known that Arizona was out, then Big 10 was going to act. And then Oregon and Washington were going to accept. And that's what happened.
All right. Thanks
Plus,
a lot.
none of them, look, and I'll just end it. I'll end your phone call like this. Any school that had an option did not like the media deal that was presented to them that contained mostly streaming with Apple. That media deal versus what the Big 12 was offering them, what the ESPN and Fox was offering, it was no comparison. It was a blowout in favor of the Big 12. This whole story was the Pac-12 were not able to get a media contract presented in front of the presidents that could get all those schools signed because they couldn't get a decent media deal. That was the story. Nobody's fault other than the network saying we do not want a one-region Pacific Atlantic Coast Conference any longer. So that's what happened. But I thank you for the phone call.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Washington State's in a tough spot. And I think the Mountain West is going to eventually be able to... They're going to be able to eat, but they're going to have to wait.
Call from
JB.
I'm sorry, was that
text,
KB
press
or
1.
JB?
To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Greg?
Yes, is this JB?
Yes, it is.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir. Sorry, we had a little problems with the phone.
That's okay. The way you answered it threw me off for a second. Well, congratulations on finally getting your flowers and getting the L call from somebody. So
Yes,
that
and
was
that's
nice.
something.
Finally,
Yes.
finally nice to hear. As usual, and I know some of your legends like Moen Vision, Larry, Eric, Immaculate, and Conundrum get upset at me when I say this. But as usual, I don't speculate. And the reason why I say I don't speculate, because with all these moves, I know the backside of this. Even though the schools are making money, I talked to 5 people who had the same job that I have, and unbeknownst to me, 3 of them have already left their schools, and 2 of them are leaving because my position is being, like running back, is being devalued by colleges, and that is the position of equipment manager. So I just know that that's what's happening behind the scenes. Also, this is back to my original statement on your show. This is all due to the paying of players. So, they're going to cut where they're going to cut, and they don't, if they can get by with interns and fresh out of college people that they can lowball and pay, that's what these schools are going to do behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Moving on from there, a Mountain West, I guess you call it the Pac-4 merger. I like to name the Mountains of the Pacific. So, I don't know how you feel about that one. But
For the new name?
Yeah, for the new name, the Mountains of the Pacific.
Interesting. I haven't even thought about a new name for the Mountain West. New branding. It all depends on what they eat. If they just eat Washington State, they're probably not going to change. Washington State and California, they may not change it. We'll see. Interesting. Right. I didn't even think of that.
You had a posting on X, or what the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Of the Minnesota-Oregon Sun Bowl.
Yeah, 1999. We lost that game, 24-20.
Yeah, I was at that game, and then I was at the rematch of that game that we won.
Yep.
On the last second kick.
Yep.
And as both teams have to go out the same tunnel to get to your locker rooms. And as we were leaving, I had a short, scruffy guy with a beard and whatnot look up to me and say, "Wasn't this fun?" And he was decked out from Oregon stuff from head to toe. And I said, "Yeah, it was kind of fun. We won, but yeah, it was a good game." And then the realization hit me. It was Phil Knight I was talking to. As we were leaving the field. So I won't say that I met Phil Knight. I'll just say I had a quick message with Phil Knight.
That's good. That's cool.
Yeah, and then I get one. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I've declared there's a lot of winners. There's some losers yesterday, unfortunately.
Right.
One of the winners was Phil Knight. This is what he wanted. He wanted Oregon into the Big Ten. No matter how he got it done. I mean, discount, that's fine. He just wanted them into the Big Ten. So he got another victory.
Well, I heard something yesterday that he was kind of backtracking for a second, and somebody got to him and said, "Hey, things are going to change,
And this conference, if we stay in it, it's not going to get an automatic bid.
Yeah.
We can move to a conference that will get an automatic bid, and then he kind of threw his hands up and said, okay, you got my blessing.
Yeah.
So that's what I heard.
Yeah, the whole... go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying the whole argument of we should remain in a conference that's easier to win a conference championship so we get an automatic berth. That has not... no school has made a decision based upon that. It would be stupid if they did. You know, Oklahoma and Texas, they moved to the SEC not because it's easier to win a conference championship, right? UCLA and USC moved to the Big Ten not because it's easier to win a conference championship. Oregon and Washington moved to the Big Ten not because it's easier to win a conference championship. That's not even part of their criteria and what they're looking at. Or if it is a criteria, if it's listed, it's at the bottom, right? It's at the bottom. So,
right.
But go ahead.
And if you take that chance, like I said, you can either be in a conference that doesn't get an automatic bid, or they can get rid of automatic bids altogether.
Oh yeah, yep, yes.
So who knows what's going to happen in 2026? So
yes, sir. Yep.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
Pie chart of blame has to equal 100%, and here's the candidates: media people, ESPN and Fox, Pac-12 leadership, Big Ten leadership, Big 12 leadership. How would you break that pie down, Ray?
I would say Pac-12 leadership, the biggest slice.
Yeah.
And then the next slice that's almost as big as that is just the economics of consolidation. Like this was going to happen.
So you're saying the media people?
Media and just media. This was going to happen. But I would give the biggest one to the Pac-12 because they could have done some stuff to make it a lot more difficult to eliminate that conference, or where they would be the survivor and let's say the Big 12 would not have survived. They should have expanded to Central Time Zone schools, and they failed to do so.
Right.
So yeah, those would be my two biggest slices. Then I would give the third biggest slice to Brett Yormark himself.
Okay, so you would blame the Big 12.
I would for Brett Yormark, Bob Bosley for being smart enough to take all four of those schools.
Right.
And then for Brett Yormark for him jumping up in front of the Pac-12 and getting that media deal done before the Pac-12. He didn't. You know, a lot of people in his position would have said, "Oh, I'm gonna wait because these deals always get better. Our deal's gonna be better than the Pac-12." No, Brett Yormark understood the limited windows, the super conference the SEC and Big Ten were building. He understood the media recession that was evolving, and he's got in front of the Pac-12. So he gets the third biggest slice, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So for me, at the end of this call, for me, the Pac-12 leadership, with their arrogance and ignorance about the whole landscape, I'd give them 60%. I'd give Fox and ESPN 30% because they're the puppet masters. They were manipulating behind the scenes. They were tampering. And then with the last 10%, I'll give 5% to the Big Ten and 5% to the Big 12.
Got it.
With that, Greg, thanks a lot. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a future media mogul. Have a good day.
Appreciate it, JB. Thanks for the call, Mr. Golden Gopher. Phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. Talk anything you want to talk about when a college football, anything. The big games coming up week 0, week 1. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate is on the line. Another hot guy is on the line. What's going on, sir? What's happening?
Just getting home from a little breakfast, and I'm seeing that you are still on after streaming for 2 hours. Well done.
Is that how long it's been? I didn't even know.
Yeah, it started streaming 2 hours ago.
Okay.
I was shocked, but I'm kind of glad to catch in with you guys. We're having a little chat with the guys out here about like AQ status stuff, so I thought I'd pipe in a little bit about that. But
go ahead.
I'm also kind of curious what you're thinking on Florida State. But first, to these guys, the reason why I think AQ status is here to stay.
What was that?
Is because I said AQ status is here to stay.
Got it.
Like,
Okay.
Get rid of it.
Okay.
Because anything that you see in this 12-team tournament coming up that's new, that's different from the 4, is all being test beds for future 2026 solution, whatever that is. AQ status, bye, and home games for at least the first round, all going to be part of that.
Okay.
Now, how many AQs there are, that's up for question and debate. But I do believe that at least Big Ten and the SEC will have AQs for their conference champions, probably the Big 12, and maybe one more for like top-ranked G5. Maybe, who knows if the ACC is alive. There's also, I've got my little thing about an elite private university conference, if that comes about, and that's a P style. So it's variable right now on how many, but I don't see them not giving their conference champion that extra level of boost, because they don't want them to just go out in the first round. You know, have them give them a bye, automatic qualifier, because you look at Kansas State, they didn't even get in, right? So,
yeah.
You know, like they would have gotten an extra boost, and that gives more value then to the conference championship game for whoever wins that. You want that to be as good a game as possible. So you want them to be playing for something special.
Yes.
By an automatic qualification, it helps make that game worth that much more to the players, to the viewers, the network. So it's all business. It all makes sense. But so yeah, I don't think automatic qualifiers are going anywhere. Buys aren't going anywhere, and first round at home games aren't going anywhere.
Wow.
But
so you think the 2026 playoffs are going to look similar to what we're going to get in 2024 and 2025, except for the money's going to be bigger. There's probably going to be more diversity of networks that are going to be showing the games, right?
Yep.
But it's going to be largely similar. Do you think it's going to go to 12 to 16?
Nope. Because 12 allows for buys, 16 does not.
Okay.
I actually think it's going to get smaller, but conference playoffs will more than make up for that. And that's where a conference like the Big Ten or the SEC cashes in big, and they pull more of the pot to themselves. You make the big tournament smaller, which is where everyone can go, and you make your own playoff tournament that leads up to it into a bigger deal, and that's how a conference like the SEC or the Big Ten pulls more of the pot to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have like an SEC tournament, a Big Ten tournament. We're using the term playoffs. I guess someone made sense to me that. Like playoffs, like you'd see in the NFL, they have their conference playoffs that lead to the Super Bowl. Same thing here. Have like conference playoffs that lead to the postseason. And then you have a smaller tournament there at the end. Now, not everyone likes the idea because, you want to have more games across from the conference. Because right now, the way we think of things as like 10 or 12 team leagues. And so you need to have more cross-conference gameplay in order to really get a good feel of things. But I don't think the SEC people actually really care about that. They seem to want to have, if you're going to have a 4-team national tournament, they want 4 teams, and they don't even care about anyone else. So they'd probably love to have their own conference playoff and then just have a tournament of champions. A Big Ten with a coast-to-coast lineup from USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, Florida State, Notre Dame, Miami, added in with Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, the list goes on. They don't really need to take part in a larger national playoff. They could have a conference playoff that has a ton of big brands from across the country. And so if they decide to do that, everyone else has to play along and do the same thing. But what that does is that allows a G conference to also have a conference playoff and maybe even get that sold to the networks much better than they could with their regular season.
One thing I disagree with you on. One little pushback. Huh?
I said, I'm sure there's plenty. It's not a perfect,
perfect
thing, but
one little pushback from a Gopher to a Hawkeye. You had mentioned early that you think the 2024-25 is sort of like a petri dish, they're going to see. I don't think so. I think soon after the 2023 season's over, I think the negotiations, the elbows start getting thrown on what a 2026 playoff looks like. Because, the media companies are not going to want to wait that long. You want to have open bidding. SEC and Big Ten are going to know what they want. They're going to push their chips to the middle of the table. And I don't really think, how it's perceived, the 2024 playoffs will look like. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just putting that out there. Whatever it looks like, however we perceived how fun it was, how successful it was, how much money it made, 2024, 2025 playoffs, I think the negotiations of what the 2026 is going to look like starts happening before the 2024 playoffs even get played.
Agreed.
Oh, okay.
I agree with you, but what I think happens is, as that's ongoing, the statistics and metrics that come from those tournaments will have some shaping of that conversation. But it's 100% going to be before that. I think what we're seeing right now tells us that's the case. Because as I was telling you, I didn't think that this was coming until next year. And it's all going down right now.
Yeah.
So it kind of tells us there's a value to these folks to have as much consolidation done as soon as possible, so as you're saying, they can start that conversation. But
yes.
I definitely think that the statistics and metrics that come from, especially the 2024 season, I think 2025, when it happens, will just be like confirmation, so to speak. Like, okay, we were right. It lined up the same as 2024. But in 2024, they're going to have, for the first time, home games in the national tournament. So they're going to see the numbers. They're going to see if it gets that much more viewership from the national audience because the crowd and the atmosphere is much better or whatever. Like, they're going to have measurables based upon these new things that they wouldn't have had before, because the contract with ESPN didn't change. They basically went to ESPN and said, hey, would you like to make a whole lot more money than you thought you were going to make before? That's basically what they did. They took a 4-team tournament and turned it into a 12-team tournament, and ESPN is going to make piles of cash more than they would have previously. And, in return for that, we fashion it the way we like. And I think that's within mind, getting these metrics for the future in 2026 of what they'll actually do when they have, as you said, NBC, CBS, Fox, and who knows whom else all competing to try and get these slots. And that's when you say the gold rush of 2026.
Yeah.
It's these networks and how much they're all going to pay now for this.
Yeah.
I couldn't even project how much they're going to be willing to pay. I got no idea.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of money. So,
real quick, before I let you go, so that you can move on. I'm sure you're ready to get done. What do you see going on with the Seminoles this week?
Now, did you catch my early part of the show?
I couldn't. I literally had to go right.
We don't know. We made it a pretty good point at the start of the show. Florida State, from what we were told in a very serious manner, they're gone. They are gone. Yeah. Whether it be it that they send that withdrawal notice before August 15th of 2023, which is just in 10 days from now, or like next week, or be it they send in that notice before before August 15th of 2024. They are gone. They are gone. By hell or high water, they're going to send a check at some point. They're going to withdraw. And nobody knows the timing of this. We don't even know if it's going to happen before August 15th. I know a lot of people think it is. The people we talk to really, truly don't have that confirmation. But the confirmation, they are gone. This is not a point of contention. This might be risky. It might be stupid, whatever. But they're going to bet on themselves. And the reason, Immaculate, that it very well could happen this next week is because Florida State, from their perception, is that they're going to bet on themselves. Okay? They're going to send over a check. They're going to probably get it. We have heard that they most likely have all or almost all of what they need already for the exit fee. When it comes to the grant of rights, they're probably going to work with the private equity firm, whatever.
Yep.
But the point is, and I really never thought of it this way, but the point is, Florida State believes, and they said this at the Board of Trustees, that they're going to die by 1,000 cuts, 1,000 different cuts if they just wait 13 years. This is the highest their athletic department, that their brand is ever going to be right now, Immaculate. Because of the next year after, all those SEC schools are going to be making 30, 40, maybe even more money per year than Florida State. They're going to be able to pay their players, their coaches. It's just going to be that Florida State's going to get buried. So if they're going to do a deal with a private equity firm, if they're going to cut a deal saying we'll pay out that $600 million, $700 million for the next 70 years, you can get a little bit of a slice of our T-shirt sales, our ticket sales, well, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Our highest value is going to be now, not 2 years from now, not 3 years from now. It's going to be all SEC with that new TV deal with ESPN. Mississippi State in the next 3 years is going to be making $120 to $130 million more than we will on media money alone. Are you kidding me?
And that's a serious number too.
Huh?
That's a serious thing. I don't think people realize. Like, they're looking at 20 to 30 or 40 right now. That's nothing compared to the gap later.
Yes. So we're going to do it now. Florida State's going to do it now. That's how they're thinking of this. So we were told this is happening. This is happening, and it's going to happen by sending the check. They're not going to fight it. They're going to pay the exit fee. And if ACC does not accept their payout, they're going to try to settle. If ACC doesn't settle, then Florida State thinks they have the angle when it goes to the courts, because they're going to say, look, we're giving you more than what we would get in the next 13 years. We're giving you a little bit extra for damages. We're going to get we're going to pay you off a little less when it comes to the exit fee, the $120 million. We'll settle that for $100 million, $90 million, whatever. But this is the check. If this is the number you do not like, tell us the number you like. We'll settle it in the court, but we're not going to fight anything. We're paying you. We're betting on ourselves. We cannot die for the next 13 years. So the story is, today we are reporting that not only the smoke is real, but the fire is real. Florida State is gone. Whatever the saying is, Immaculate. They are gone from the ACC in the next year or 2 years, probably here in the next year.
I think I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
The cost is going to be pretty insane, and to most folks, it's unbelievable at this time. But if we could all see how much money is going to be there in the future, I think we probably would feel a little differently about it. And I think these folks who are making these decisions now, I'm going to give them enough credit, the benefit of the doubt, that they have seen these type of projections. And so I don't read this as a bluff. If it is a bluff, this is one of the greatest public bluffs of all time. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think it's a bluff. And
to get your entire board of trustees to say what they did, that's pretty wild.
And we also reported today that the California Stanford, being a potential 17th and 18th member of the Big Ten, there's no work has been done on that. Yeah. In other words, if that happens, it's not happening anytime soon. I know that's been put out there, potential Big Ten's looking at that option, but that is not something they have worked on at all. So that's not happening. I think they're really looking at what's going to happen here in the ACC with Florida State here in the near term. So that's what we reported today.
Yep, I agree 100%. I've had so many times where I've had to try to talk about Stanford, so yeah. I think people will all see that in the end, and I do think that they got something up their sleeve. Now is not the right time for that conversation for another day, but yeah. I think we all got a very big surprise coming our way in the somewhat near future, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
I appreciate the catch up, and hopefully that helps some other people in chat. I'm going to let you go, and
got it.
Looking forward to more on this.
Thank you, Immaculate. Appreciate it. That was Immaculate, Mr. Hawkeye, Bill G. Thanks for the super chat. Will so-called Olympic sports be decoupled from football and basketball? This may be coming sooner than later. Thanks for the update. I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe in some ways it will, Bill G. I just look at, like I'm a Minnesota Golden Gopher. It probably the fastest rising sport in the Big Ten right now is women's volleyball. And I'm not, it's not quite a revenue making sport yet, although it might be getting real close in Nebraska. It might be getting real close in Wisconsin, maybe in Penn State. There are so many tickets sold. All these places, University of Minnesota, women's volleyball, the stands are packed. Big Ten Network, the ratings are going up. People are loving this. I think, we're going to get a college football game coming up pretty soon, hopefully next year. Video game, right? I think soon after that, you're going to get a women's volleyball, college volleyball video game coming out with NIL, with women's student athletes getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. And I don't think the Big Ten, I don't think the Big Ten is going to decouple their women's volleyball away from their Big Ten conference. This is something that has caught on fire. The consumers, the fans are falling in love with it. It's fast action, and it's doing great on the Big Ten Network. SEC baseball, that is hot stuff. I don't think in parts of the Big 12 as well. I don't think they're going to I don't think it's going to happen for the most part. The Olympic sports being decoupled from football, I think there's still going to be SEC, this sponsored sports, Big 10, Big 12. So I'm not a big believer in that. I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll take the L. Tough Tony, Greg. When will the $5 bits of broken chair trophy be recognized by the administrations at Minnesota and Nebraska? It raises money for a great cause. In one way, I wish that the administrations of Minnesota and Nebraska would recognize it, because, as you say, then there could be more of more visibility, more money raised for cancer research, for children cancer research. In that aspect, I agree with you, Tony. On the other side, part of the genius, part of the greatness of the $5 bits of broken chair trophy between Minnesota and Nebraska is because no one else recognizes it except for Nebraska fans and Minnesota fans. So overall, though, Tony, because it raises money for a great cause, I would have to lean in on, I would hope that at some point soon, the University of Minnesota and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln recognizes the $5 Bits of Broken Cherry Trophy. But until the meantime, I hope Nebraska and Minnesota fans keep contributing, donating to the great cause that it gives a great awareness, cancer research. Thank you, Tony, for the super chat. I appreciate it. We're going to lock it down today, right now. We've been on the air for, 2 hours and 20, 2 hours and 30 minutes. I want to thank you all for joining this live show Saturday morning, going into Saturday afternoon. If you're new to the channel, before you leave, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button because it helps us with the YouTube algorithm so very much. If you like the content, smash that like button. Share the video with the family and friends. I thank you for the donations, for the incredible generosity that you have shown us. We're keeping the lights on. We're going into year 2. We have 5 more days left. 5 more days left until our 1-year anniversary of a college football YouTube channel. And we have blown away all projections. Why? Because of you, the PATC community, your incredible contributions to this show with your calls, with your comments, with your donations, with your activity on Twitter, keeping me informed on our live shows. You all got your head on a swivel, making sure we get all the breaking news. Very interactive between the community and its hosts, and I thank you so very much. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.